If you're watching my channel, then you probably already know the importance of video game music, and even more specifically, you know the importance of composers like Koji Kondo, Koichi Sugiyama, and Nobuo Uematsu. These three men alone are already heavyweight masters that have pushed the boundaries of video game music in different ways. Koji Kondo strengthens the player's connection to the game through memorable and engaging themes. Koichi Sugiyama raises the technical bar by using these classical and orchestral arrangements with only a handful of 8-bit sounds and simple MIDI. Nobuo Uematsu is responsible for taking what Sugiyama did and polishing it further to expand the sound of orchestral music combined with some Japanese elements to make the cornerstones of modern JRPG music. But what if I told you there's a composer who has combined all three of these elements and crafted some of the most beautiful music in gaming? Yoko Shimomura sensei, a maestro whose work spans across many iconic franchises.
ゲーム音楽の作曲を主にしています。はい。よろしくお願いします。
If you don't know this composer, which you should, she's worked on almost every franchise that's known to have some great music like Final Fantasy 15, Mario RPG, Live Alive, Street Fighter, Mario and Luigi, Legend of Mana, Xenoblade Chronicles, Kingdom Hearts, and along with many other franchises. While doing research for this video, it deeply surprised me how many franchises she had her toes in. And for context, Koji Kondo is synonymous with Mario and Zelda, and Sugiyama with Dragon Quest, and Uematsu sensei with Final Fantasy. While they have etched their sounds into these games, Shimomura's unique style resonates across a multitude of titles, which there's nothing wrong with. I have a deep respect for all of these composers that managed to put their sound within the identity of these games. But the thing that really impresses me about Shimomura sensei is despite her working on so many projects, there's no denying that her sound is being etched between the identity of all of these games. But before we dive into the music directly, I want to talk a bit about the person and her backstory. And just a side note, this video won't be too theory focused like a lot of my other videos. I want to mostly give focus to just the composer and her story. Born on October 19th, 1967 in Hyogyo Prefecture, Japan, Shimomura's passion for music began at a young age with piano lessons starting around 4 or 5. She fell in love with orchestral music and decided to pursue a degree in piano performance. And even now, Shimomura lists Beethoven and Chopin as some of her main influences on her personal website. But instead of being a composition major, she was a piano major, right? Shimomura originally planned to become a piano teacher, and at the time it was really popular for music majors and piano majors to become piano teachers after. It seemed like a very stable job. Once she graduated, a certain company was promoting a job position for a sound creator at her university, which would be Capcom.
ことってあんまないんですよ。でもすごくね、こう夢中になって音楽だけでもいろんなやっぱ楽器をやりたくて結構あれやこれや手を出してで最終的に続いたのが、ピアノだけだったんですけれどもやっぱりちょっとピアノ決して私うまくないのでピアノでなんかするっていうのはやっぱ難しいかなと思っていろいろでも音楽の仕事したいしというのでじゃあちょっと作曲面白そうだしなんか曲作ってみたいしやってみようかなみたいな感じだったんですね。で当然周りも私の両親ですら 2,3 年ですぐ辞めるだろうと思ってたみたいなんです。で私自身もそんな長続きすると思ってなかったのでそれがね25年も続けられてきたっていうのは自分でもびっくりですね。
Since she didn't really have the appropriate skills for the job, she kind of just lucked her way into the position by relying on a demo made from her own piano playing. At the time, being a video game music composer was an unheard of and an unpopular job, so it looked weird to people that a piano major from a prestigious school would choose such a job. She was also very nervous because she hadn't seriously learned and studied composition. Though she mentioned that she was inspired by Koji Kondo when she heard the music for Super Mario Bros., which helped push her to see the potential in video game music. But when she first started on the job, she suffered from a lot of imposter syndrome due to her not thinking she could write music in that way.
そうですね、ゲームすごく好きでしたね。ですごく好きなんですけどアクションゲームとかすごい下手くそであんまり上手にはできなかったんですけどでも何度もスーパーマリオブラザーズとかも何度も落ちてゲームオーバーになっても遊ぶぐらい好きでした。そうですね大学で習ったことって本当に私作曲の専門じゃなかったので本当に 基礎しか習ってないんですけれども、こう曲を作ってこうなんかこうすごくこれなんかちょっとどうしたらいいのかなって迷った時とかにその知識というか習ったこととか思い出してこうすればそうかこれでうまくいくんだって思うようなことは何度かありますね。もうちょっと
This is something most creatives end up struggling with. You're in a position where you feel like you ultimately don't deserve based on your perception of your own abilities, and you're constantly feeling inadequate compared to some of your peers and people around you. And this is something that, I go through when I'm making videos for this channel. But in Shimomura's case, there was a real pressure to perform. When she first heard the music for Dragon Quest, it completely changed the way she thought about video game music, as she didn't know that orchestral and classical style music could work so well for it. After several projects, she achieved early success with the iconic Street Fighter II soundtrack. Her innovative approach to character themes and incorporating cultural elements set a new standard. When initially approached with this project, she was told to write character themes, but instead of just making character themes, she suggested using caricatures of the countries the fighters would be representing, which is why you can hear some of these influences within the different songs, like Gil's theme sounding like an American theme song for a boxing or a wrestling montage, or Chun-Li's theme having a pentatonic scale serve as the melodic foundation of the song, and MIDI instruments acting as Chinese instruments.
一つの曲を書くって決まった時に、大体企画の人からこういう曲が欲しいですって、リストみたいなものをいただくんですけれども、いろんな風景、その独特なテーマソングっていうよりもその各国のイメージの BGM っていうのはどうでしょうかっていうお話をさせていただいたんですね。
Most of the techniques she used were basically just making themes that sounded like a 80s wrestler entrance, but that took place from the country that it's from. Like, look at Ryu's theme. It doesn't sound like a Japanese song, but more of a Western 80s song that wants to try to sound Japanese. Despite her success with Street Fighter II, Shimomura yearned to work on a fantasy-themed game, leading her to Squaresoft, where she composed for Live Alive and later, the Legend of Mana soundtrack. Shimomura Sensei has said at the time that The Legend of Mana felt like the soundtrack that encapsulated her sound the most out of any game she's worked on. And that's a really important note to write down. As a working creative, one of the things you have to realize once you actually start making money for your work is the fact that often you'll end up doing something that doesn't really fit your image of your own art or excites you. In fact, most cases you won't end up working on a project that you really like unless you're lucky or you're already well established, like somebody John Williams. So when you do end up getting on a project like that, it often becomes a turning point in your career or your artistry. Listen to some of the songs from Legend of Mana and tell me what you think below in the comments, what you feel like her sound would be. I'll give my thoughts after I talk about the next game coming up. Now we get to the part of the video where maybe most of you were anticipating, but this is the part where I talk about Kingdom Hearts. Her work on Kingdom Hearts is still so beautifully perfect. I remember the first time I played Kingdom Hearts was when I was at a friend's house, and this was before I was into any other like anime outside of Dragon Ball Z. But seeing that opening sequence as a child really struck me and left me so stunned. I was so excited to spend my time in that world, which just ended up being us stuck on Destiny Island because we couldn't figure out how to get past that. But the name Kingdom Hearts was etched into my mind for a long time. And after that, I hadn't touched it for a while until I bought the collection on PS4. And immediately when I got to the title screen, the same music I heard from then drew me again to be excited and wander into the world that is Kingdom Hearts. Shimomura sensei has said something in an interview about her approach towards song construction and loops in video games that interested me. The interviewer asked her, how does she go about making loops that the players don't get tired of? Loops are an integral part of the process for video game music, and in fact, most of the music you hear in a video game is just an interactive loop. And if you don't know what a loop is just a piece of music that could flow together endlessly. Like there's no real end to it unless you write a separate end for it. For me, when I first read that question, I was thinking about trying to make sure that the music was as active as possible to make sure that the player didn't get bored of it. I was wrong. Shimomura sensei then responded that she felt like the loops that players grow tired of are the ones that are too overly quirky, and that her approach isn't about making a song that's not boring, it's about making a song that's not a burden. While I was reading that, feeling both silly and profoundly amazed, I thought about her music specifically in Kingdom Hearts and how that might apply. That led me to the main theme overall for the franchise, Dearly Beloved. And there's some other songs that I might talk about or not about within the Kingdom Hearts franchise, but I genuinely feel like the main theme is important to talk about because the main theme is the overall point of the game condensed into a musical, theme. While it might be a bit cliche, just hold on for how I connect this together with Shimomura. One of the things that amazed me about the theme for Kingdom Hearts is its simplicity, and it's really ultimately a simple song. Now I want you to listen again, but I want you to think about how long the song lasts for. What answer did you get? And I'm expecting most of you got a longer answer than a real one because the song is about 30 seconds long. Like, yes, the song can play longer than that, but that's a loop, remember? The first full loop of the song starts and ends at about 30 seconds before it loops again. Did that surprise you? Let me know in the comments below. And that's what Shimomura sensei means when she says she makes loops that doesn't burden her audience. The lack of any burdens lets her loops flow so well to the point where you just get lost in them. Let me know if I was like kind of an exception to this, but when I first was playing Kingdom Hearts, I would just sit at the title screen for the longest periods of times and not even know how long the time went by because her music kind of like almost like erased the time for me. And that's kind of part of what she means about not being a burden. Like it just is so easy to consume. Like as a composer myself, I couldn't imagine convincing myself to make a song with only one rhythm for the melody. And that's never an insult, but there's this constant inner pressure to make things interesting and to change it up for the sake of changing it up. But she ignores this pressure and completely only serves the game in a song rather than giving it to her creative ego of wanting to do more. When I hear this theme, it gives me a sense of a constant journey, but not the typical bombastic shonen adventure we're used to, but more of a steadily approached trail where you're constantly moving, walking even. This isn't to say Shimomura sensei doesn't make more complicated music, but it's to show that her music doesn't step outside of its own bounds. There's a layer of confidence in her music which, weirdly enough, is added by her humility. Often during interviews, Shimomura sensei paints herself as the person who was just lucky to get the chance to write music for video games and versus being confident enough and knowing that it was going to happen. This makes me think that she's never been too competitive or aware of her peers, in the sense that maybe she never thought she was good enough to compare herself to other people. She even talks about how she doesn't think there was any workplace competition going around, but if there was, she probably just didn't notice it. And it's a rare ability to consume your art form and keep self-comparisons to a minimum. And ultimately, the people who are able to do it tend to tap into a deeper form of melody than anybody else. Someone like Miles Davis is a great example for this. He always went to the places first before others because he never was caught up in letting other people decide the direction of his music. Something else I want to highlight is Shimomura sensei's voice on her instrument. As a composer, the instrument you first touch or have the most proficiency with is going to influence your writing and what you're comfortable with. For instance, I have the most proficiency on saxophone and clarinet. Most of the serious compositions I've written for melodies I've played on saxophone first, and then I put onto other instruments. And I also have a harder time writing for piano versus saxophone, since I have to be more conscious about what the piano player views as a hard thing or what is even possible for them to play, versus I kind of just know what a saxophone player should be able to do or not do. When Shimomura sensei started working on fantasy games, there's a more notable use of piano in her music. Remember, she went to school to study piano, not composition, and piano is ultimately what got her a job composing in the first place. This is the point I wanted to connect back to with The Legend of Mana. One of the reasons I think Shimomura sensei felt like she found her sound was because she embraced her roots on piano more within that game. Even in tracks that don't directly have piano, you can hear the influences of it and how she creates counterpoint between some of the top and bass voices in a way that's very similar to a lot of older classical styled piano pieces. Some of her most iconic songs are just her featuring piano with strings, sometimes with a vocal on top of that. And this instrumentation is personally where I feel like she really shines the most, with my main point of evidence being the main theme for Final Fantasy 15, Summoners. I went to the trouble of roughly transcribing this theme, and I'll leave a link in the description below for you theory nerds who want to just dig more into it yourself. It's not 100% accurate at all, but it should give you a rough idea of some of her orchestration ideas and other things like that. Her humility shines again through this song, the biggest factor being her ability to just be patient. She's not afraid to just let vocal and piano marinate, even when the strings come in. It's just a very minimal and slow build up, and then they explode into this big moment. Even when the strings first come in, it's just, this is what Shimomura sensei's writing means to me. Being comfortable with your own voice and doing away without the ego. What it means to understand her music. Let me know below if you guys disagree or have some different thoughts. Thanks for the wait on this video, and there was a lot of videos made in between this that I just scrapped because I wasn't confident in the quality. If you like this video, check out my video on JPG music if you already haven't. Till next time.
もちろんこうやって待ってくださってるファンの皆さんがすごく嬉しいです。まだ各曲はまだこれからも各曲があるので、これからも楽しみに本当にしていただけると嬉しいです。よろしくお願いします。ありがとうございます。